Hey everyone, welcome back to the Critic-Verse. Today we're going to be covering the finale of Bel-Air Season 2, titled Don't Look Back. The show has already been confirmed for Season 3 for a couple of months now, but who knows when that will be with the writer's strike going, but I stand with the writers. Before we get to the review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help grow the channel. Now, on to the review. The episode is titled Don't Look Back, most likely in reference to all the characters trying to move forward with their lives, but the past keeps trying to stand in their way. Viv is trying to move forward with the Neiman Foundation, but Janice won't let go. Phil taking his deal in a different direction, but Erica has ideas of her own. Will's issues with Lou take shape when the latest father figure lets him down. Or Carlton trying to hide his addiction while trying to be the perfect Carlton he thinks people sees him as. In the episode, Viv and Phil are discussing the effects of losing basketball and what it might have on Will. Cut to Will back playing street ball like at the beginning of the season, but masking his pain with his huge ego. After Will's trash talk almost lands him in the hospital before Jazz intervened. While trying to talk some sense into him, he pushes Jazz away, cursing him out. Carlton's addiction even takes place at school, since he keeps a stash in his locker with a little Coke spoon. It's probably Dior, because Carlton's bougie, you know. And then he gets news from Miss Bassett that she set him up with a Princeton recruiter, and she believes that the Founders Award is already his. And she also says that Lisa then meets up with Will on the beach, using the same manner of introduction Will used on her earlier in the season. And she could tell that Will needed a friend from the text he sent her. And also, she's willing to stay because he stayed for her in episode 8. Will talks about losing his one place of control that he believed the basketball court was, and because of his situation with Doc, but Lisa comforts him, and it seems to really help him despite how basic the advice was. But it probably meant more because of who it was coming from and not what she really said. Next, Hillary has lunch with LaMarcus, which turns into him planning for the future, since LaMarcus wants to take Hillary on a trip to Paris on his bye week to reconnect, but Hillary says she needs time to think about it. Phil then brings Erica to an empty office floor, which he tells her it's the spot of his new Philip Banks and Associates, the name of his new firm. He said James would run his old firm and Phil would be co-counsel for any time the Garrison account needs him. And that he would also still stay in touch with Carson and Lake as the smaller firm that they outsource cases they don't want to deal with to, instead of being an in-house lawyer. Honestly, I don't know how all of this works, but it kind of seems like a convoluted solution. Back at the house, Janice comes to talk to Viv to ask her about the board offering Viv the position to her face, and once Viv admits it, Janice says she isn't giving it up without a fight. Lisa and Will get to school after first period, and Lisa calls Drew out about the locker room video, after he questions her about her whereabouts and how she showed up with Will. Viv, while trying to vent to Phil about losing the position after Janice threatened to go to the media to the board, gets frustrated with Phil just telling her to stop and give up instead of supporting her to keep fighting like how she usually does for him. Next, Will calls his mom and fully admits his daddy issues has been his major issue this whole time, and that he's been looking to others to find answers, but Violet advises him to find the answers in himself instead of others. And let's hope that advice really works for him. Afterwards, Hillary is shown borrowing luggage for her potential trip with LaMarcus from her parents. And when she asks them for their advice on her love life and her relationships, they unknowingly to her make it about them and throw subs at each other, which Hillary isn't really picking up on, and the advice ends up not being helpful at all. Carlton is speaking at a mental health workshop, and Drew is there hating from the front row. And then hating right in Carlton's face. But he seems to have this narrative in his head about Carlton being the villain and he's the hero, that he has to reveal Carlton's dark side to everyone else. But you can see this does get to Carlton with his real issues bubbling below the surface. Next, Will goes to talk to Uncle Phil, who tells Will that he isn't going to help Doc, and if any of this does fall back on Will, he'll fight for him. And while Will appreciates that, he wants to give the Zenith players a chance to talk to Phil and tell him about all that Doc has done for them off the court, showing that Doc is all they have, to which Phil agrees to help Doc after all. Next, Viv calls Janice's bluff and that she's actually helping to perpetuate a stereotype about black women being unable to work with each other and turning on each other for their own advancements. Or Janice can help create a better narrative, and that Vivian is the right person for Janice to pass the torch on to. Next, Phil is shown strong-arming Doc's former partner Lorenzo on the fact that he may or may not be a rat, and that the homies that he got standing by him won't take too kind to that. But Phil and Jeffrey help him see things in a new way. Will then sets up a training scrimmage between Bel-Air Academy and Zenith Hype, and the coach, while seeing Will shed his selfish ways, offers him his spot back on the team next season. Phil is closing the deal on his new offices, which Jeffrey will also be working with him. But what Jeffrey's gonna be doing there, I don't know. I kind of see him as a COO or maybe a CFO. I think Jeffrey might be good with money. But Jeffrey is a man of mystery, with a mystery of his own, as he keeps getting calls from an unknown number. But more on that later. Erica then shows up to congratulate Phil after Jeffrey excuses himself, and then Erica kisses Phil, but Phil insists that that can't happen again. Will finally tries to make up with Carlton and throw out this idea of West Philly Will, because honestly he was getting so annoying this season. He tries to convince Carlton to not go backwards because he isn't that guy anymore, but Carlton seems out of reach at this point. Next, Will comes downstairs dressed for the Founders Award ceremony, and his tux is fire. The velvet orange jacket, man, so cool. And he thanks Uncle Phil and expresses interest in sports law, actually, which kind of cool. Next, Ashley begins to thank Will and Carlton for being great role models, and both are kind of her big brothers. And this seems to reach Carlton more than Will did. But again, it's not about the message, but more about who it came from. Being from his little sister, someone that looks up to him, really seemed to get to Carlton more than Will trying to reach him, because of how distant and downright mean Will has been to Carlton ever since he's had that thing go on with Zenith. At the Founders Award, Lisa, looking quite exquisite, gets told by Drew that he did leak the locker room video, but also that Lisa isn't over Will, and until she is, she'll never be available to anyone else. Don't know if this is the last we'll see of Drew. Kinda hoping, but kinda hoping that maybe he might get a little bit of redemption and become a character that you could actually like. Will then apologizes to Jazz for how he acted earlier in the episode and thanking him for always having his back. And they also do the iconic handshake from the original series. And he also tells Jazz that it's not too late for him to go to Hillary and tell her how he feels, which he does take that advice to heart. Doc seems to part with Will on good terms, but it seems as if he and Jackie won't get the do-over that she wants for them. Ashley's former rival might be her new love interest next season, as it's revealed that the girl Olivia is also LGBT. Will admits his feelings for Lisa, and the two seem to get back together. Carlton takes a pre-award bump from his locker stash, but gets caught by Ashley, who won't agree to keep it quiet for Carlton until he gets physical with her. And now, while I don't agree with how Carlton responded, there was honestly something really irritating about Ashley not wanting to be there for Carlton. Well, I mean, she's there for him in a way that he doesn't want her to be, and it feels really pushy. I can't tell why she's so strong about this, but it's sort of a mix of confusion and respect that I have for the character at this point. Jazz goes to Hillary and lays his feelings out in the open, but she doesn't want to get hurt again, and he says he'll wait for her more or less, but says that he loves her. Carlton wins the Founders Award, and in my opinion, a moment of pure stupidity, finally comes clean about his addiction and drug abuse in his acceptance speech instead of doing that at home to his family in private. I guess you can say it took guts, but there's definitely a fine line between bravery and stupidity. Back at home, Phil questions Carlton on his addiction, and you can definitely see Viv and Phil embody the parental stereotypes and how Viv is more kind and nurturing to Carlton in this moment, while Phil takes a stern approach, which doesn't actually help the situation, but puts more of a boundary in between child and parent. We then get this misdirect scene with Hillary and Jazz as we think she's going to Jazz's shop, but as he opens the door, it's just someone delivering a package really late at night, which didn't quite make sense. But then also, it's LaMarcus who opens the door to Hillary as she's going on the trip with him. Didn't expect that to turn out that way. What a bummer. I was Team Jazz. Phil then goes to Carlton to give him support. Then we see Viv thinking about her new position and how it will actually take time away from helping Carlton, but I actually hope she takes the position instead of focusing all on her kids. Even though she is a mom, she does need something for herself. While Phil seems to look for admiration elsewhere, because a little while earlier he claimed that he's getting the blame for giving everyone a great life. Okay, that's a wrap on Bel-Air Season 2. It was quite the bumpy ride with all the highs and lows this season. I wouldn't say this season was better than the first one, but it definitely did a good job on expanding the Bel-Air universe. But it had difficulty navigating it, as the first 3 episodes dragged the story out that the rest of the episodes were going too fast paced because they had to catch up to where they wanted the characters to go in such a short amount of episodes, which is typically the problem with streaming shows, as they have a short amount of episodes, where network television shows primarily last longer than 10 episodes, I would say. They go about 13 at the least, and sometimes can range to 22 at the most. It feels like the Zenith Hype storyline might be going away as Will gets his spot back on the Bel-Air Academy team. Ashley might be getting a new love interest in Olivia, and Jeffrey's past isn't done haunting him, as he gets a letter at the end of the episode with photos of him and his son. He did say he ran with a rough crowd before he had to leave his home. Now I wonder who's coming after him. And then we also might get to see what summer in Bel-Air was like, as hinted in the last lines between Will and Lisa in the episode, which might be where they're taking us in season 3 before the cast goes to their senior year of high school. Jabari Banks and Ollie Sholotin, who play Will and Carlton respectively, were the standout performances this season. You really felt hard to like Will this season, as his ego took the forefront to hide his daddy issues, because it always seemed inflated while Carlton kept getting knocked down time and time again. Phil just comes off as selfish this whole season. The whole law firm storyline felt uneventful and felt way too convoluted in its solution. I mean, I always thought, couldn't Phil just get Carson and Lake to acquire his old firm, since they already had the Garrison account? And they bragged about the size of their firm dwarfing his old one, so they could have took his old firm and used that as his satellite, as their satellite firm that they wanted. But it seems that this was just a way for Phil to get his own firm, where he's the one calling all the shots, which is how Phil seems to like it. And I know it sounds like I hated this season, but I genuinely enjoy the show, and I look forward to talking about the show in the comments with you all, or talking about the show in the future, as season 3 is in the works. But who knows when that'll come out? Hopefully it'll be sometime next year around the same time, or unfortunately it might be later. Let me know what you want me to do videos next on, as I'm looking for a new show to replace Bel-Air in the lineup. Thanks for watching, and thanks for joining me in the Critic-Verse.